Anna. No, I wouldn't call myself a digital native, but I'm quite familiar with digital end devices, and so it really upsets me when I get into my car and try to connect my iPhone to the car, that sometimes it works in the morning but it doesn't in the afternoon, and that really drives me crazy. Now, am I the only one suffering from that? No, don't worry. I think sometimes my car also does what it wants to. Now let's imagine, these are very simple things that don't work. Now, what's supposed to happen if several people use the same car? For example, as part of a shared economy where we've got 20 or 30 people using the same car on the same day and the connectivity doesn't work. I mean, that's what our OEMs should gradually tackle. Yes, you're quite right, but well, shared economy and car sharing is not that big thing in Germany. Well, maybe not in Germany, but worldwide, 72% of the respondents to an MHP study confirmed that they could imagine use shared vehicles instead of their own car. Well, probably in Germany we're not really at the forefront of that, but we also have got lots of apps which we can use for car sharing, MileShare now or whatever. And then, well, you can rent a car for just a few hours or for an entire day. So why should OEMs enter that business? I mean, and then they would also run up losses because fewer cars will then be purchased. Well, I think that's the misconception we should correct. Now let's imagine if our annual mileage with a car is 20,000 kilometers, and if soon we have shared economy, then much more users will drive a car, and then it's going to be 300 or 400,000 kilometers per year for that car. So there will be fewer cars being driven or parked in the inner city, but the life cycle will also be much shorter because after 1 or 2 years they have to be replaced. So the production volumes of the OEMs will not really drop. Well, yeah, you've got a point. Even I can understand that. But, well, let's be honest. I mean, it doesn't have to end with cars. There are so many other business models and services that can be linked up to that. For example, 15% of the people in that survey said that they would be willing to pay more for the same distance traveled in a shared car than with a public transport. And pay-per-use is also something the top decision makers in the automotive industry have noticed. And they say that pay-per-use in the future is going to be an important element of their business models. And that's something the OEMs should not miss. Because at the end of the day, we've got to say, these business models will make our car a software-defined vehicle. So that like a smartphone on wheels. And we all know that with smartphones you can purchase the one or the other additional options. And if users are willing to pay extra for a connected car service, that would of course lead to additional revenues. Well, that sounds interesting. So that means I can buy some additional options. For example, when I go skiing in wintertime with my family, then I order a seat heating for my wife and also for yourself. Well, and if I travel on my own, then 30 or 40 additional horsepowers. Yes, if you're really taking your car to cross the Alps, then you can add some horsepowers. Yes, that's true. But somehow that sounds quite complicated. There are many things that have to smoothly interact. I guess that's not really easy. Yes, it's a complicated matter. Now, if the car has to become a software-defined vehicle, then we've got to ask ourselves, now that component-focused automotive industry, how can we cause it to change? And in the past, the aviation industry has already developed some interesting approaches and ideas. One of them is called systems engineering. Now, systems engineering rather focuses on systems. So that means we look at the vehicle in terms of systems, not focusing on individual components anymore, but systems. So we break down the vehicle into subsystems, subsystems, and then these subsystems are developed independently together with requirements management, architecture management. Well, hold it. That's a bit too fast and too detailed. All right, one system after the other. All right, let's do it slowly. System focus means I've got a logical architecture. So the vehicle system is not broken down into components, but into a logical architecture, which means on the level below the vehicle system, we've got a sub-level or a subsystem level, and that may include 5 or 6 subsystems. One of them might be the drive system. And the drive system can then be broken down further into further subsystems. For example, the braking system or the driving systems. And the braking system then covers the function of braking. And this comprises all of the hardware and all of the software and all of the mechatronic elements that are needed to implement that function of braking. So that's an integrated approach. We develop the systems, we integrate them, we validate them, and then make them available to customers. Well, then I've got hope that at some point your iPhone will connect to your car and that all systems will properly interact. Yet, I'm not fully convinced yet. Now, what happens if we once again look at the overall system, the big one? All right, we can look at the systems, the subsystems, and the subsystems and develop them this way. However, what's important, we also have to look up to the next higher level. Now, what's above the system level? Well, and then the vehicle as a system is just one of many systems within the ecosystem that we call mobility. So that's why we call it the system of systems. And equal partners within that overall system are other systems in addition to the vehicle system. For example, charging systems, back-end systems of the OEMs, for example, for over-the-air updating, or the traffic infrastructure, or the apps. You just mentioned Share Now. That's one of the apps which we can use on your smartphone or also in the infotainment system of the car. And now, one thing is very important. The OEMs have to move away from being sheer car manufacturers towards becoming mobility providers. So what they want to have a piece of the pie. Well, yes, I understand, and this means that more really also delivers more. But I think that's easier said than done, isn't it? Well, it is a complex challenge. Because it means there's one thing we have to achieve. We have to be able to tackle this transformation as an entire company. Because what we have found out is that we must not focus on the engineering part of that transformation, but rather that is a matter for the entire company. So somebody got it right, did it? But don't give me Airbus, but rather somebody from the automotive industry. Well, in the automotive industry, that point was certainly reached later than the aviation industry. And we also act as consultants to several OEMs in this regard, so they're on their way. Well, all right, that sounds okay. So this means that we are actually already consulting OEMs. Tell me more about that. Well, we support several OEMs in their transformation towards systems engineering. And well, here really we cover all of the dimensions. We are consultants to the board level, but also several levels below that. And we provide strategic consultancy. We check whether the strategy is still the right one. We readjust the strategy if necessary. But we also provide consultancy in terms of communications. So a systems engineering big picture which is used in communications throughout the company. We also offer consultancy in making this method operational in the business units. And we also have developed a KPI dashboard to really measure the progress of that transformation journey. So how far have I gotten? in this transformation. And we have found out that this is not an approach which applies to technical development only. I mean, might imagine that systems engineering is just a task for engineering. No, it's the entire company which has to go along with it. So we're talking about purchasing, sales, production, quality management. They all are affected by this kind of transformation. And then, of course, it's an entire different ball game. Well, yes, because transformation, people think we can do it so somehow on the side. We're starting out in engineering and then we'll roll it out and then it's all going to be fine. But it seems that it doesn't always work. So what did you try to involve the other departments as well? Well, the other departments and units, they are not too familiar with systems engineering in the first place because it really was developed in R&D. But as this is really a matter for the entire company, one has to convince people that they're also affected. So how is sales, the sales department, affected by that transformation? So what's the typical lessons learned from that? Well, every single department is affected more or less. We have done respective analyses, we have organized and held workshops, and thus we managed to motivate the divisions and business units to look into that matter, to deal with it. And above all, they also invited experts from in-house. So they not only hired us as consultants, but they looked for the in-house experts. Well, that's something I really also like, to try to involve all of the employees of the organization, to enable them, as it is called. Well, that's also our approach. I mean, at some point we want to become obsolete ourselves. So enabling the company to do the job even without us. So we've got interdisciplinary teams handling this in management consultancy, but also in terms of IT consultancy. So here we have really proven that we have an in-depth know-how in terms of management consulting. So we can develop strategies, but also architectures. We can help operationalize systems engineering, and of course we have proven that we can also deal with the HR topics. So it seems to me you have already gained some great insights, but maybe you've also made the one or the other mistake. No? Well, yes, of course, we also made our mistakes. We really have gathered a lot of insights and findings, but we also want to offer consultancy for major transformation programs in the future, not only systems engineering, but also other transformation programs. The entire company is affected. That's what we find out. And of course, that's something that we have to now roll out. And you cannot do so by just distributing a newsletter every 2 weeks. You really have to make sure that you get the buy-in of the entire company. And one thing's for sure, if you don't have a commitment from the top management, so if the CEO and the management board do not fully back that idea, well, I know it sounds trivial, but that's the point. If you don't get that commitment from top down, then the transformation doesn't work. So you need full commitment from the very top. And then another enabler, of course, is early and open and honest communication. Because, well, I said that the entire company is affected and so many employees at an OEM, then you need to make sure that they go along on that journey as well. Well, there's a lot of lessons learned that you have generated. Nevertheless, I might imagine that some people are still somewhat hesitant and do not dare introducing systems engineering. Well, what would happen if that were the case? Well, if the OEMs really want to remain competitive in the future, the German OEMs, and if they want to have a piece of that pie, namely to become a mobility provider, then they have to change very urgently. They have to pick up speed. They have to accelerate their development processes. They have to get away from trying to find the 100% perfect solution. They have to start focusing on functions. They also have to, of course, focus on sustainability and systems as well. And they have to be willing to change. Well, Our listeners here didn't wait for so long here just to get this kind of cliffhanger from you. What does this mean for us as MHP? Well, one thing's for sure, we can provide these kind of consulting services also to the top management. But let's say, if you want to hear 3 key learnings from us, then these are the ones. Number one, the German automotive industry, one of the most important industries in Germany, well, they're undergoing an extreme change from a vehicle manufacturer to a mobility provider. And in doing so, they have to get away from focusing on components and rather focus on functions and systems. All right, and secondly, we'd say that the changes focusing on such a software-driven vehicle, they will entail changes. Changes not only in R&D, but also in all divisions and business units, and they will also have an impact onto the working mode in these units. Well, and certainly what matters most is to pick up speed and to be willing to change. If the German OEMs really want to leave their footprint in that overall mobility system and the system of systems, then they really have to pick up momentum now. Otherwise, they just will fall behind and be mere hardware providers. And that would be disastrous. And of course, we as MHP, we want to provide support and consulting. We do have a lot of know-how in this regard because, well, it might be exaggerated to say, but I think this transformation is the biggest transformation in the automotive industry since the introduction of the automated production line. Well, that's good to hear, because an iPhone that does not properly connect to the car the way I would like to have it, now that's something you won't tolerate for very long.